right, Catherine. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to hear this incredible story from you.
It's my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
So tell me about your yoga journey, a little bit about, what yoga means to you and what role yoga plays in your life.
Absolutely. We're having this conversation at an auspicious moment for me because it's my 20th anniversary of studying yoga.
Oh,
I
wow.
started in 2002, not long after 9/11. Was kind of going through a traumatic career change, and was sort of just, you're on a path, you're searching. And I live near Larchmont, and hence the Center for Yoga. And so my husband and I wandered into Gene Heilemann's Intro to Yoga class, and I just got hooked. I mean, it's the simplest way to put it. But the journey has been really an evolution. So I had studied dance, I'd always exercise, run, play tennis, all that stuff as a young person, and continue to hike and walk and do all those good things. And so I viewed yoga at first as exercise. I'm just gonna go do a workout, like learn the poses and do a workout. And and then things started to evolve. I started to understand, kind of from my dance training, like the importance of alignment and the importance of proper posture, and really kind of going deeper on what a pose means and how to do it properly, and how to kind of both get into it and then relax into it.
Hmm.
And then I really started to learn about breathing and the sort of importance of, proper breathing, and how, our teachers talk about yoga as being a moving breath exercise. And then that leads into meditation. So I've been a pretty serious meditator for the last
Mm.
2 years, actually, and sort of the alignment of yoga and meditation, and in the end, it being really a moving meditation. And so it's very much evolved for me. And I think the sort of sticking with it piece is what's been a big part of it. And what's been fun is I've not only studied at the center 3 times a week, but if I'm traveling, I take yoga wherever I go.
That's
So
great.
I've literally gone from like a funny little basement in a tiny town in Arkansas on a Sunday morning to like the fastest moving street in Rome in like a palatial building. I mean, it's just I've had these great extremes, and kind of everything in between. Most cities have a yoga studio. And so I've learned not only about the practice, but sort of what the field looks like.
Mm.
And what I've ultimately come to realize, or what I came to realize over that time, was that the Center for Yoga's big room is the best yoga studio in the world. I mean, I just,
You're not biased at all.
you
You're
know,
not
you
biased.
just come home and it's like, yeah, I've kind of been in these places, and okay, all right, yeah, this is pretty nice. And then over time, it was kind of like, yeah, this is pretty good. Well, maybe it's the best. I mean,
Oh, that's very sweet.
it's kind of nice to be your home studio. So anyway, that's my kind of evolution. And
Yeah.
um, I'm very excited to be back in the studio practicing today.
So, real quickly, Jean is a famous teacher. Is she an Iyengar teacher?
Jean teaches, I think, Jean Heilemann teaches a practice that's a blend of so
A
many
blend.
things.
Okay. Which I
She
think so many teachers in Los Angeles do so well because of, I mean, in large part because of Mati Azrati and Lisa Walford.
Yeah, and then again, Jean as well, I think. And so,
Right,
and
right.
it's funny you talk about Jean, because Jean has been with me since the beginning of this
Yeah.
practice. And we just had a fun moment where we celebrated our 20th anniversary like a week ago. So
That's so
uh,
nice.
he's been a great kind of advisor along
Yeah.
the way, which has been wonderful.
So you have an incredible career. I feel like, you know, you could have been like one of those 80s characters of like the high powered woman just going into rooms and
I was.
commanding them and
Over the whole bit, let me tell you. I mean,
exactly. Like, look at me today.
all
I'm
players.
in your, I'm paying homage. So tell me about how yoga was, offered a compliment to that over the years,
Mhm.
or how yoga has been useful to you in as you've grown in your career?
Well, I think it's so if we're looking at 20 years, that's my time in LA. So I headed development at LACMA. I founded an organization called United States Artists, which is a national organization that gives grants to $50,000 a year. 50 artists get a grant from the United States Artists, all disciplines, all fields, every state in the union. And then heading development at the really development marketing communications at the Academy Museum, which just opened last fall, which is fabulous. You've got to go.
Mm,
And these are stressful jobs. You're dealing with very high flying donors. The stakes are really high, and you've got to stay focused. And I think that there's so many positive benefits to yoga, and I think that for me, one has been kind of just kind of
mm,
bring it down to the mat and kind of what are you dealing with today, and what can you just let go of and focus on the moment, and really focusing on the body. I mean, I'm having started in dance, for me the body is so critical,
mm,
and keeping your body in its best possible condition at the age that you're at is very critical. And so it wasn't always about work, and it wasn't always about home life. For me, my life's been this kind of funny triangle of like homework, yoga, homework,
mm.
yoga, homework, yoga. And so that when the studio was gone, it was kind of like like a certain level of collapse took place.
So yeah, let's talk about that. We all went into lockdown in the US, at least in March of 2020,
Yep.
and we all started doing yoga online, thinking it was going to be a short-term thing. And then it quickly, became obvious that it wasn't going to be a short-term thing. What was that experience like for you?
Well, it took me a while. Obviously, we all went online. We all, my yoga mat was right over here in the living room.
Yep.
Um, the teachers were all kind of adjusting, and the students were adjusting, and the studios were closing, and there was just all of this kind of moment, and certainly none of us could have anticipated that here we are heading into year 3, and it's still not over.
Hmm.
Hopefully it's over soon, but we don't know. And it's so it was that sort of like moment of confusion. Now we're working at home, and people with kids at home are sitting at the dining room table working with their kids at their side and teaching them. And this, you're a young parent of a young child. And so it was super confusing, I think, for everybody.
Hmm.
But I don't think any of us anticipated this kind of Spanish flu length of a pandemic.
Right.
I had worked early in my career in AIDS. So I had certainly had my share of pandemic experience, and kind of knew the horrors of that. And so when we were stuck at home, it was just kind of like, okay, we're stuck at home. We're working at home. We were raising money at home. We raised the last $25 million for the museum on Zoom.
Wow. Oh my
That was kind
gosh.
of crazy.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
that was kind of crazy. It was kind of crazy, but we did it.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, it was a whole thing. And then as far as the studio goes, I think we all just kind of thought there weren't any signs on it for a long time. It was just kind of like leaves were blowing up against the door, and we were kind of like, well, what's going to happen to the studio? Nobody really knew. I mean, or certainly nobody I knew.
Were the teachers teaching online via the studios still?
You took the
Okay.
words right out of my mouth. So the
Okay.
teachers knew. Yoga Works had owned our studio for about 16 years. They had closed all their studios, moved online. A lot of our teachers moved into that mode. And of course, they built this very successful, beautiful platform, I think better than anybody else. And so it was kind of like, but the teachers knew that the studios were closing. And so what sort of started it all for me, as I always love to say, and it's 100% true, it always starts with the teachers. So that we learn so much from our teachers.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you know Kim Fish. Did you ever know Kim Fish as a teacher?
No, no.
Kim was a teacher at Center for Yoga and later Yoga Works for 14 years. And she had a young child. She and her husband decided to move to Virginia, which is, I think, where he grew up, to raise their family and just sort of have a change of life. And she had left about 2 years before the center closed. And then we officially closed. Yoga Works closed, center is gone. And she started this video series on YouTube called Revolving Around the Center. And she was just starting to interview teachers, like, what did this place mean to you? What did you learn there? What is your path? What did it mean to you? And everything was in the past tense. And it was like, whoa, okay, that's a little scary. One of my teachers said, you got to watch this video. These videos are amazing. You got to watch them. And I was like, okay, send me the link. And then I got the link. This is from Deirdre Kelly, who was kind of the first with me in on this. And I was like, can't watch it.
Felt like you were watching a memorial service.
I literally couldn't watch it. It was like, because I knew I'd start to cry. I was like, I can't watch it. And then finally everyone's yakking about it. And I thought, okay, watch it. And then I watched it. And it was the first episodes with Lisa Walford. And I learned all this stuff about the studio, which was fantastic and so interesting. And then there's a moment in the video where Kim Fish looks into the camera, and she'd been my longtime teacher. And everyone's like, what do we do? We're just like, it's so far, it's gone. We're so sad and we don't know what to do. And she looks in the camera and she says, you live in LA. You know what to do. And I thought, well, wait, who's she talking to here? And then I thought to myself, I do know what to do.
It was like a calling.
It was, as Laura, your sister, would say, call to action.
Yeah.
And fundraisers, of course, we're always looking for the call to action. And I was like, okay, call to action. And the very same day, I walked by the studio and there was this giant for lease sign that had just been put up on it. And it was like, I felt eviscerated. I was like, oh, this just makes me sick to my stomach. We have got to do something. And so I was raised by a community organizer. I studied community organizing in college. And so, what do you learn in community organizing? Well, you drop the stone in the pond and you get the ripples, and you start in the center. Like, well, what's the Center for Yoga? Okay. So we start in the center, and I just started making phone calls. Like, I talked to all these teachers, Deirdre Kelly, Jean Heileman, Joe Cara, Joan Hyman, Ashley Rideau. And it was just like, who do you know? What is this a good idea? Should we do this? Everyone was like, yes, go for it. People could not have been more enthusiastic. And for me, what was so kind of hilarious is my whole career has been in the nonprofit sector. I've never done a for-profit business. So I was like, I got to learn stuff, and fast, because we were so worried that the studio was going to go to some other business, right? So how do you run a yoga studio? Well, I don't know.
Not many people do know, to be honest.
Well, I just started calling people. So the teachers were like, call this person, this person, this person. So I talked to Jody Blumstein, who had owned her own studio in Chicago, Grant Ashtanga teacher, Julie Buckner, who'd owned a studio in the Valley, Lori Parrish, who owns a studio in Santa Fe, Lisa Hasse, who ran Center for Yoga, owned it, and then sold to Yoga Works and was a regional manager. So I'm just like.
And were these mostly cold calls that you made, or did you have people who connected you to people?
Who connected me.
Okay.
I didn't do any cold calling. I just
was
very kind, like, call Julie Buckner, here's her number,
Great.
Or I walked into Lori Parrish's studio in Santa Fe, where I was staying for a while. And I was just like, I want to meet the owner. Who is she? Tell me who, just
amazing.
How do you do this? And then we also, as I was talking to people, I'm just like, help me build enthusiasm here. So the neighbors in our neighborhood in Larchmont were super enthusiastic. The businesses were, the businesses on Larchmont, that's a lot long, but that's a lot of businesses. A lot of those businesses were devastated by COVID. A lot of them closed because of COVID. And the truth is, our studio had 120 classes a week, We had 1,000 students. So we were those students were circling in and out of all of those businesses.
Getting
They
tea,
were
getting
gone.
coffee, getting lunch, getting dinner, buying books,
Well,
buying
exactly.
clothes, all of it.
Right.
Hmm.
And so the businesses were really hurting and they were like, please, please help bring that studio back.
Hmm.
And so we had that level of enthusiasm. Neighborhood associations were excited about it, ultimately wrote letters of support. And then I realized, okay, if we're serious about this, now we need to create a business plan. So, and I'd done enough kind of business kind of plans in the nonprofit sector, like, feasibility studies and case for support and all that kind of stuff. So I said, okay, let's do business plan. And so then I got in touch with former employees. Again, Lisa Haase, Jacqueline Kozak, Deb Anderson, help me build a budget. Like, what does the budget look like?
Hmm.
Like first year, second year, third year, like what does that look like? And then, who are all the people involved? Who are the teachers that want to be involved? And I created this kind of little rough business plan. And then I started talking to folks I knew in the neighborhood who might want to invest. The first person I called was Diana Buckhantz, and her son, Sam Doniger, who ultimately became our first investors. They were just like, when you have a business plan, come to us. We're like, okay. And then I love to describe this because it's like people started just dropping out of the sky onto our laps.
Hmm.
The first person I called at this moment was a friend of mine who's a business startup expert. His name is Michael Barton. And Barton, he's like, he studies, meditation, and he's got his gurus, but he's also this business guy from the University
Hmm.
of Chicago. So I was like, Barton, I need your help, and he was like, okay, we're going to do a real business plan and we're going to develop an investor list. We're going to start reaching out. We're going to do a best case scenario, worst case scenario, terrible case scenario for the business. So we did a lot of scenarios planning.
And the nice thing is Center for Yoga opened in 1968, right? So it had such a long track record of being a fantastic yoga studio.
We're the longest running operating yoga studio in Los Angeles. So Ganga White started it in 67 and then moved to that space in 1969.
Okay.
So 50 plus years it's been a yoga studio. So Barton sort of happily dropped into my lap, and then Jean Heileman introduced me to a real estate agent, student of hers, a guy named Jay Yu. And Jay was like, I am getting our studio back. I am going to do a deal with this landlord and they will not say no. And I was just like, oh,
amazing. Whew.
Sit up a little straighter now. This guy says he can make this happen. And I'm like, I don't know how to negotiate a lease. Like, what? And he was just like, I got this. I'm doing this. I'm like, okay, great. And then Lisa Bellamore, who is a PR agent, said, if you guys get this off the ground, I'll do all your communications. I'm like, okay, great.
And does she do yoga as well? Do you know? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is an amazing combination of people who just cared passionately about yoga, about this and about the space, or about the community in general, and connected each other to those who had a specialty in each background that you kind of needed to get this happening. Amazing.
I mean, you're 100% correct. So it was kind of this what I love about this project is that there were no obstacles. Like nobody said no. Nobody said no. I mean, when does that ever happen in life, right? Like,
never.
You're never going to be able to do this. It'll never work. No, everyone was, yes. Who do you need to meet? When do you want to meet him? I want to help. Whatever I can do, just tell me. Tell me now. Tell me now. Call me tomorrow. Everyone was just like, yes. And I was just like, okay, let's just keep moving.
So Jay was able to negotiate a lease for how long?
Let me tell you the story because
it's
actually quite amazing. So as I said, we were terrified that someone else was going to get the lease, and we heard people were looking at it. So we were like, and we're still talking to investor prospects and the teachers. Again, the teachers are giving us names of people. I know people. Barton knows people. Neighbors are helping us out. But we didn't have our investors all lined up. But Jay just said, we've got to go in. Okay, so Jay and Michael Barton go in. They had never met before. They met in the parking lot of the real estate agent.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And meanwhile, I'm in Santa Fe. So all my conversations are on Zoom. I'm in Santa Fe for the month. These guys meet in the parking lot. They're like, okay, let's go. Boom, into the agent. And they called me 20 minutes later. I'm like waiting by the phone. And I thought, oh, we lost it. And they're like, they really want to work with us.
Wow.
And I was like, what? You're kidding me. I mean, it was just one of those like almost teary moments. I mean, we couldn't believe it. And I will tell you what's interesting about this moment in time is that, a lot of landlords have not been nice. They've just not been nice. They'd throw you on the street in a minute. This is not the case with Fred Leeds. Fred Leeds owns that building, and he and his agency could not have been better partners. They were like, we're going to give you time to ramp up. We're going to give you time to ramp up to the full rent. We're going to pay for a brand new HVAC system, COVID safe. We're going to pay for a nice renovation of the studio, just a light, beautiful paint job, new carpet, new lighting. It was like, we really want to work with you. We understand that this is a very important, place for the community. And I had done enough homework online, as fundraisers, you always have to learn about who you're going to talk to know this about Fred Leeds. This is a man who really cares about community, who is a philanthropist, who is generous. And I just thought, hopefully we'll be able to, in a way, tug on his heart. And we did. And so we got the lease, but of course the conditions were you had to have money in the bank. No fool he. And so then we were like, okay, we got to move on these investors. And so Michael Barton and I were just doing pitch calls, me in Santa Fe, him in LA, and whoever, teachers would give us names. We knew people. We were just like.
So you tried to identify people who were both philanthropists and had a vested interest in yoga, or how did you did you have them broken into tiers of?
Everybody was connected to the yoga community. And all of they were either neighbors. We have four investors. And one of them is Lisa Walford. So
one of my favorite people.
Yeah. So it's Sam Doniger, Diana Buckon, so I mentioned earlier, Lisa Walford, and then another neighbor of ours, Randy Pascal. We actually turned people away. Wow. There were people who wanted to invest. We wanted to keep the numbers small. We knew how much we needed to raise given our various scenarios. And we were very, we just wanted to keep it, they wanted to keep it small. We wanted to keep it small. And we're very lucky because all of these people are, Lisa's this brilliant teacher. Diana ran her own PR firm. Sam Doniger is a producer. Randy Pascal runs all these different businesses. We've got Michael Barton helping on business, Jay helping on real estate. So it's like, and I'm at the table helping with, all these different things. So it's been this great, I would just say it's a labor of love. I mean, everyone other than the investors have volunteered their time to make this happen. I mean, and thank goodness, and so graciously. And Lisa in particular, Lisa has such an amazing story, and you may want to interview her one day about it, Andrea, because it's such a great story. So she started her career at the Center for Yoga. She lived in the studio.
Oh.
When Ganga White got that building, it's 3 different studios now on floors 2 and 3, above 2 businesses, 2 restaurants. And the top floor was an apartment, and Lisa lived there. And
so sweet.
And then the big room was the studio, and this very small room was a yoga library. So Lisa lived on the top floor because Ganga wanted you to feel like it was a home, like you were coming into someone's home. And so that sort of spirit, and he knows, he's very excited about the studio coming back, and he's been a big sort of cheerleader from White Lotus up in Santa Barbara. He and Tracy Rich. All of our former owners are great cheerleaders. But Lisa lived there. So for her, it's this amazing full circle of, starting Center for Yoga, starting Yoga Works. She now really runs our curriculum. She is the sort of our lead teacher. So she's come in to develop the curriculum. She takes classes with all the teachers. She is the one who's invited every single person to come on board. One of the teachers said to me, the name Lisa Walford showed up on her phone one day, and she said it was like getting a phone call from God.
Totally. I can imagine. Yes.
We're just like,
Yes.
what?
Yes.
Who is this like super revered person? Why is she going like me?
Uh-huh.
And so I think the people who started the as our starting teachers were just so thrilled and honored to have Lisa be at the table. I think,
Yes. She's
gain some
so well
experience.
respected and she's such a beautiful person and she's so kind and she's just such the embodiment of the practice.
You know what? She is. And
Yeah.
every single thing you say is true. And she really cares about this place, as does her husband, Ross Smith. Ross Smith. So Ross is a technology guy. So he's just like, well, whatever you need in technology, just let me know. So he'll like, they live in Portland or outside of Portland on the beach in Oregon. They'll come down. They have a condo in Santa Monica. They'll come to the studio. Lisa will be in taking class or teaching, and Ross will be at the front desk like, let me help you figure out how to like make this
That's
work and that work.
great.
You
Yeah.
just like this, and what about that software? And so it's like everyone brought their strengths to the table in a way that's so lovely. And then the other thing I love about our studio is that we are now female majority owned,
Hmm.
which is very interesting given the fact that we started as a Masonic lodge in 1925 that probably didn't even let women in the
I
doors
love it.
unless you were a servant, serving meals. Even then, they may not have allowed women. So, this sort of old white men,
The irony. Oh, the irony.
just like, more women teaching, we're female majority owned. We're started by a woman. So it's really been, a lot of fun as part of our kind of, relaunch. Another thing I just wanted to mention to you is COVID. So of course, yay, let's start a business in a pandemic.
Hmm.
What are we thinking? And we opened the studio in August 23rd of last year of 2021. And it was just as the Delta variant was hitting. So, we took the protocols very seriously. So, again, we have the great filtration system, brand new. We asked for proof of vaccination or negative COVID test. You have to wear a mask in class. The mats are safely distanced. So we can't be at capacity, of course, for the moment.
Hmm.
And, everything's been building very, very nicely and slowly. It
Hmm.
hasn't
Hmm.
been like we're overwhelmed with students. It's been a very kind of calm
Hmm.
building. And now with Omicron starting to go down, we're starting to see the classes building.
Good.
And that's great. That's
Good.
great.
Yeah.
Our owners are happy. We're all happy. And we've got about, when we were at our height, we were at about 120 classes a week. We're now at about 40.
Hmm.
And then we're also doing all these different workshops, which have been surprisingly popular. So Joe Cara, Lisa Walford, Paul Cabanese, Lisa Bassior does sound baths. David Lynch is coming home from Germany this winter to teach. And so we've got, the workshops have been a kind of fun test.
Hmm. Hmm.
What's going to come.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's been wild.
I think people are just, I know for myself, so excited to be back together.
Yeah.
And I would not classify myself as a natural optimist, but I do feel optimistic at this point in terms of
I do too.
Omicron and just moving forward that, it's going to be a new normal for all of us just because that's what happens when the whole entire world goes through something together like this. But I really love sharing this story because I think there's just, many small businesses have closed around the world. Many yoga studios have closed.
Yeah.
It's been incredibly hard on people emotionally, physically, financially. And it's just a beautiful thing to have a story of hope. And that's what this
Yes,
story is.
it is.
And a
It is.
story of really, galvanizing a community to make this happen.
Yes.
So it's inspiring and I'm happy to have you share it. And I'm also just grateful to you for taking that call. Like you said, like we all get these calls in life from time to time.
Yes.
And that really was a calling. Like, if I'm really truly listening and sensing something here,
Yeah.
it mobilized you to action. So that's huge.
Yeah,
Um,
you pay attention. We pay attention in these moments, and I think, you're right. I mean, I think we all sort of felt helpless. It's like, ugh, like, what do we
mhm,
do? What can we do? And so for me, it was that, you know, pay attention,
mhm,
pay attention to your heart,
mhm,
and then take action. I mean,
mhm,
we all have the ability to take action. We all have the ability to be leaders. And I would say to you, for people who have any inclination toward reopening their neighborhood studios, if there's one thing I learned about this experience is every yoga studio is a community.
mhm,
You know, the same, it's the people in the neighborhood, it's the people who come every day. People might live far away, but they're part of that community. And, if you find yourself in that place where, my favorite studio, which is half a mile away, is now gone. And, is it still available? So many of these places are just sitting empty. I drive by them.
mhm,
It's heartbreaking.
mhm,
So you have to sort of think about who cares,
mhm,
who knows who can help widen your circle.
mhm,
Try to find somebody who knows how to do a business plan, who's really smart on that.
mhm,
I think our scenario building really helped. I think that, you know, I think there are a couple different kinds of investors. There's the investors of the heart, like, oh my God, I've got to save, da, da, da. And then there are people who are like, bottom line, like, tell me the bottom line. Well, what is the worst case scenario? And so you have to be prepared for both, I think,
mhm,
when you're talking, and you got to be prepared to pivot in a conversation to, okay, here's the bottom line. That would be the moment, like, toss the ball to Michael Barton and he'll tell you all about finances.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
because, and at the end of the day with yoga, no one size fits all. So nobody's studio is like our studio. We have 3 studios. We have expensive real estate on Larchmont. We're not on the ground level. Our capacities are very different. And so you sort of think about, well, what is my place?
What are your strengths?
What are your strengths? What do you look like? Who are the teachers? Will they come back? Every teacher has a following.
Mhm,
Will the
mhm,
students come back? Who's teaching online now and who's in those classes? I studied a lot of what was happening online. In Santa Fe, I went to classes where the teachers were both in the studio and on Zoom at the same time. And I was like, how
mhm,
does this work?
mhm,
So you have to be open to just being curious about how does a
mhm.
business like this operate and how does it pivot?
Yeah,
It's interesting. And financial models will be different for every single organization. So
right.
it's a some organizations may need to raise a couple $100,000. Some may need to raise more, so
Yeah.
it's a different kind of thing. But I would also say to not be afraid of money. I think people get scared when you talk about money, and they say second only to death, people fear asking others for money.
I was going to get to this because here's the thing. You talked about at one point in the conversation, it was just sort of a project that was meant to be, right? Everyone who you asked to get on board said yes. And but you have in your career, I'm sure, faced no many times over.
Anytime.
And I think well, two things come to mind. The first is as yoga teachers, so many of us don't have business backgrounds, myself included. So the first thing that I'm hearing from you is, figure out what you know and what you're good at, and then find people who can fill in the gaps for you. Who,
Exactly.
like you said, you didn't know the for-profit business. You hadn't put together that exact type of business plan. So you found someone to shore that up for, with you and for you.
Yeah.
But I think also, like you said, it's super scary to have a passion project and have something that is so meaningful to you, and is your livelihood, and to think that you might be facing no.
Mhm.
So, what is your advice for people to get over that hump? Because they're going to face no's, right? In order to get to the yes, I
Correct.
assume.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that, in a situation where you are really starting a new business, I mean, or bringing back a business that had been there before, it's maybe you're not the person who's making the ask. Maybe it's somebody else who's in the community who's comfortable with that.
Hmm.
Because I think there are people who are genuinely afraid of asking for money. I think rehearsal helps.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think we do that in fundraising. We okay, you know, you're the best friend of Bob, who we're going to see. You're Bob. Okay, I'm doing you're doing the introduction. You're telling me, introducing Bob to me. I'm doing the pitch. This is how I'm going to say it. Someone else plays Bob. Bob says no. Well, what do you do when Bob says no?
Hmm.
And so it's like, okay, is it Bob? Is it no right now? You're just, this doesn't interest you at all, or is it no? You'd love us to come back in a couple of months. We are talking to a lot of different people, so this opportunity may close.
Hmm.
We were on a timeline because of our landlord, and so we were able to use that, frankly, as a hook.
That pressure. Yeah. Yeah. You had pressure bearing down on you. Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to be part of this, you got to say yes pretty soon. It doesn't have
Hmm.
to be today, but the clock is ticking here.
Hmm.
And so you say that in the nicest way possible, but rehearsal helps a lot, because rehearsal helps you, first of all, just get comfortable with asking. I teach a lot of fundraising, and that's one of the things we do. We just do a lot of role playing until the person who's terrified just gets comfortable with
That's
asking.
great. Yeah.
Or backs up to say, I'm going to tell you all about it, and Bob over here is going to tell you what we need. Go for it, Bob.
Hmm.
So who are those people in your universe who are comfortable talking about money?
Hmm.
I mean, Barton, this is it started a zillion businesses, and this is what he does day and night. He was much better about talking about the actual business part of the business than I was. I was perfectly comfortable doing the ask.
Hmm.
But that's because I've done it for years and years. So it's that the rehearsal does help. And
Hmm.
in my mind, even going on a call now, or if I'm with my staff or I'm with a partner, I always do a mental rehearsal. I always think about what happens if we get the no. And I always say no is never no until they slam the door in your backside. So
Hmm. I think
um,
that you brought up such an interesting little nugget, which is instead of taking the no personally, or instead of taking the no as a rejection, you can use it as a ways to learn, right? So to
right.
learn about maybe what's missing from your business plan. Like, is it a hard no, or is there something that we're not providing for you, some bit of information we're
100%.
not providing for you? So getting curious with the person
Right.
can maybe help you figure out what you need to do next.
Always. That's a super, super important question. Idea is that idea of, well, first of all, you want to know everything you can know about that person before you get in front of them.
Hmm.
So with Fred Leeds, I watched videos of Fred Leeds. I thought of Fred Leeds as a philanthropist and a donor to this project, because in a funny way he kind of was.
Hmm.
So I watched videos of Fred Leeds. I read a ton of stuff about his background. I read a ton of stuff about his business. So of course everything's online. You can learn so much about people, and it's kind of like, what's going to touch this guy's heart? At the end of the day, what's going to touch their heart? And you also have to listen very carefully to their questions. What are they asking about?
Hmm.
That tells you what they care about, right?
Hmm.
And so that then, if they say, okay, come back in 2 weeks, you've got a whole lot more information
Hmm. Hmm.
about that person.
Hmm.
And you're continuing to do your research. And so,
This is an
um,
incredibly beginner question, excuse me, but I just, before I forget, incredibly beginner question. But how do you identify for each person that you're asking exactly what the ask is? Like, do you have an exact number that you ask for with a
well,
particular person?
in our case, we said, here's our total goal, and we're looking to keep the number small,
Hmm.
and we're wondering if you would consider coming in at X dollars.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we would come in with a number.
Hmm.
Um, and some people be like, okay. I mean, our last money came from Randy Pascal, and he was like, what do you need? I want in, I'll pay whatever it costs. It was kind of like,
Wow.
where
Yeah.
you 3 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like, all we need is X. And he was like, great, I'm in. So it
Hmm.
was like
Hmm.
a dream come true. But you're really, you also want to think about who the first investor is, because that always brings you to, or who the biggest are. that helps validate what you're trying to do. And of
Sure.
course, the minute we got Lisa Walford, it was like, all boats are
Yeah.
raised, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
When I went to the Academy Museum, Bob Iger was the chair of the campaign, the head of Disney. It was like, well, okay, the most powerful person in Hollywood heads this campaign. That's like a name I could use when I walk in the door.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it's again, you're sort of thinking, what are the hooks? We have this amazing place, we have a couple of great investors, we still need to raise X, sort of, and every organization has that secret sauce.
Mhm.
What is the secret sauce for every organization? And it's always different. I mean, as a
Mhm.
consultant, I know that, just from all the experience I've had is,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, who cares?
Right, 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 right. And then, you being in Los Angeles and working with people, your investors are, experienced professionals. But for people who maybe are finding investors that haven't invested in a business before, what kind of structure do you recommend that you provide to your investors in terms of their role in the business moving forward?
So what we did, and again, this is a term I learned from Michael Barton, we asked for qualified investors. So in other words, people who, and there are rules about that, IRS rules about that, people who can make an investment at a certain level that doesn't in any way threaten their nest egg,
Mhm.
basically, who have that kind of money that can comfortably make an investment like that. And then all four of our investors are shareholders.
Right.
And so we have a monthly meeting with the shareholders. We do, we look at our budget against what we've actually earned. So there's a very formal sort of accountability of every month there's a business meeting, the investors are there, they can ask questions of the staff. We were very clear, Michael Barton had set this up, that investors, you don't run the business, you hire the experts to run the business, let them do their jobs.
Mhm. Mhm.
And he states that very clearly, and so people understand that. And I think that's super important,
Mhm.
because people who know how to run a yoga business know how to run a yoga business, and you've
Mhm.
brought them in, you've hired them. I mean, we're fortunate in that the person who runs our studio ran the studio for a year and a half before COVID, so she knew it in and out, and she was
Mhm.
super excited to come back. And so we really ask our investors to kind of just sit back and let the business operate.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you have questions, you can ask them anytime, of us, or of each other, and then we get into a formal meeting once a month. Now, eventually, once the business is operating at its best capacity, that will turn into a quarterly meeting, an annual meeting.
Mhm.
So that's how business is run.
Yes, that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
101, business 101 for all of us.
and that is
Um,
really as far as it goes for me. No, I'm
yes,
kidding.
yes, yes.
Way better.
uh, well, I want to ask one more question, which is just how did it feel to get all of the teachers together again for that opening? And just how is the community feeling now?
I think the opening was, you know, joyful, tearful. We had done this beautiful light renovation on the building. You have to come take class, both you
I will, for sure.
please. It just looks so beautiful, and we kind of did it so gently. It feels sort of historic and respectful of our 1925 history. So in a funny way, it doesn't look like anything happened, but it
Yeah.
changed radically.
Hmm.
And people were just, to see it made them so happy. But literally, I stood at the top of the stairs during our opening day, and it was like people were crying as they were coming up the
I'm
stairs.
sure.
That's that double stairway. You leave your shoes halfway.
Hmm.
So there's a moment of ascension as you're coming in, and people were very moved, I think, by the fact that it had come back and that they had almost lost it. And there's still that vibe. I mean, I think, the teachers and the students are very grateful and thankful, and cheerlead each other, right? Because the classes aren't huge yet. A lot of our classes are 4 or 5 students, and so you need to cheerlead the teachers, like, it's going to get better, and
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's like, you're awesome. Thanks for coming. We've just all decided we're cheerleaders. Like, just keep cheering people on.
Hmm.
Because you're like the first in, and we are so grateful to you. Um, and then as it starts to build, I mean, Joe Cara taught a drum class a few weeks ago, and I took a photograph of the shoe rack, and there were like 60 pairs of shoes, and I was like, oh my god, it's like, we're back.
Beautiful.
So it's that we're still in a pandemic here, and we have to know, and our shareholders know this, and they're very, very, very patient. We just have to get through this.
Yes.
And I think our students appreciate the priority of safety, and feel safe when they practice. But yeah, but the teachers were over the moon. I mean, they were just overjoyed, super excited. The investors are super excited. And now it's just keeping that enthusiasm high, when it's still hard. It's not super easy yet, or it will get that way. But the teachers have been amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And so just so kind and generous with their time and their ideas. And I mean, again, it did all start with them, and they're the ones who are making it live.
I so appreciate that you're saying that, because it just makes my heart so happy to think about these people who were losing their livelihoods, who are now have the opportunity to have it back. I think that yoga teachers are among the hardest working people. I mean, any teachers really, but
Of course.
especially, I don't know, yoga teaching, it's 20, 25 years ago in the West, it didn't even exist as a job
No.
possibility. So it's so much of carving your own path and trying to figure it out, and trying to, you know, just from the ground up teach people the benefits of these practices. So
Right.
to give that back to them in that way is such a beautiful thing, and I just appreciate you so much for leading this project. It's so awesome.
It's been it's clearly one of the greatest pleasures of my life, and also one of the highlights of my life. I mean, and I will just say that being stuck on our mats at home for 18 months before we reopened, it's like, in a funny way, I'm almost back to being a beginner, because when you don't have a teacher there live teaching you, showing you, adjusting you, it's so much harder. And
It's
I really got bad.
yeah,
And so to be back in the studio, and to have that, both the community experience, but the teaching experience, is so extraordinary.
yeah, it
It
is.
isn't the same on Zoom. I'm sorry, it's not.
Yeah.
And much as everyone did, really, we all soldiered through. It's just not the same as being live in a classroom and having that teacher go, your legs a little, I'm gonna this here, like, great, please
Yeah.
tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So it really, and you're right, the life of a yoga teacher could not be more difficult. I mean, they pivot from Zoom to class, from driving here to there, going there. Oops, I'm going to be in traffic. Gotta let them know. It's a very, very hard life, and the devotion of our teachers is like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, Jason and I have been talking a lot about resilience lately in the face of, hopefully coming out of the pandemic. And two things that stick with me that I keep coming back to, that this story reminds me of, are, discovering new meaning, which I feel like you did in taking on this project and shepherding this project, and discovering new hope. And
Yeah.
so I just hope that everyone listening to this feels that I keep hearing a lot of like, "Where yoga studios ever going to come back?" Yes, we're going to come back. It's going to be a new normal, but we have to stay hopeful, because, as you said, there's nothing like being together in the room and doing this practice.
True. And the
Yeah.
big message to anyone who says that to you is, do it.
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Do it.
mm-hmm.
You
Make
can
it
do it.
happen. Make it happen.
Yeah. If someone who knows nothing about business could do it, you can do it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for sharing yourself.
Andrea, you are the coolest. I'm so honored to have the chance to talk to you. and finally meet you. And thank you so much for Yoga Land. And thank you to Jason. And you guys are huge leaders in this community. And we're looking forward to the day when we can welcome you to the Center for Yoga, and we will take very, very good care of you.